Welcome to this episode of the Is Believeland Real Browns Fans podcast. I am your host, James Mastrucci, and of course, Jordan Cohen is with me, my co-host. Jordan, it is a great day in Cleveland, isn't it?
It is a phenomenal day in Cleveland. We get to watch Nick Chubb play for the Cleveland Browns for the next 4 years.
Oh, so you mean the extension for the very prominent figure in the organization we're talking about is not Paul DePodesta?
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised, how much fanfare the Chubb re-signing got because, you just had, the brainchild of this entire team get re-signed for 5 years. Who cares about running backs, right? They don't even matter.
Oh, man. It was funny checking certain groups and sections of Browns Twitter to see the celebrations that they had the moment that DePodesta signed his extension, then the crushed feelings and tweets of sadness once the Chubb deal got announced. It was quite the just swing of emotions there.
Well, and it's the same group, right? It's the same group of people that I think they're small but loud.
Yes.
And I mean, what keeps happening is this idea, I don't understand. I really don't understand what DePodesta does. If you told me 2 years ago, did I think he had a role? I would probably say, yeah. I think his role is much smaller now. And evidence of that is today they asked Jimmy Haslam about contract extensions for Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, Wyatt Teller, and Ronnie Harrison. Mm-hmm. And he did not say that's Paul DePodesta. He said that's Andrew Berry.
So to
right. I don't know what Paul DePodesta does at this point. You re-sign him so another team doesn't get him, I guess. That's fine. But it's still unclear to me what role he has in the organization.
Yeah, so to quote one of my favorite movies, Office Space, so what is it you say you do here? We don't know what he does. Nobody does.
Right. No, it's unclear. And
what is his title? Chief Strategy Officer? What the hell does that mean?
Yeah, and right, and listen, the reality he may be the intermediary between Berry and Haslam, right? There's any of 8 million things he could be doing. He could be kind of doing the intermediary stuff and maybe heading up the analytics department. But in terms of decision making, I'm not clear that he's actually making many decisions.
You're right. Yeah, I don't know what he does.
Maybe he is. I don't. I mean. And I guess let's kind of maybe move it to Chubb a little bit. But if DePodesta's guardrails are right, this is a really dumb signing.
Yes. According to the very sacred and holy document known as the guardrails, this was not a wise decision. But good thing is that those are irrelevant because they signed one of, if not the best running back in football to a 3-year extension. He is in Cleveland for 4 more years.
Right. And I guess for me, the big thing is that, and we've talked about this a lot, but the guardrails were designed for a team that was literally completely rebuilding. I think that's why DePodesta was brought in to help with that. And let's just listen, the rebuild seems like it's gone well. I don't know how much credit he deserves, but maybe he deserves a little credit for that too. Maybe he deserves a lot of credit. We don't know. But the guardrails aren't relevant anymore. And I'm not really sure what DePodesta's job is, and it's always unclear. It's he's in charge of our strategy. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? And these guardrails would suggest you don't pay, really, for skill positions in general. Not just running back, but especially running back. And I think what we're seeing is the organization, probably has many better versions of kind of the quote-unquote analytics than the guardrails suggest, right? And my guess, given kind of research I did this weekend and given stuff we've heard from the organization, is they have numbers that suggest Chubb is crucial to this offense. And it's also a really good contract for both sides. So I don't understand why people are oh, well, DePodesta's guardrails, so we're going to be mad about the Chubb re-signing.
I mean, every time we bring up this vaunted document, it's usually the same thing. We take a look at it, we kind of make fun of it, and it's really about it. But I mean, everything that we've done, and I don't want to spend too much time on the guardrails, but everything they've done over the past year, even 2 years, has basically gone against everything that this document stood for.
Right. And I mean, okay, let's shift over to Chubb. Because, like, I think, like, it is the key piece of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great deal. Like, we both wrote about it this weekend. Like, this is a great deal.
Yeah, I wrote it from the perspective of kind of team building over on This Is Believeland. You wrote a very good, deep dive, numbers-based, analytically friendly, analytically driven profile behind it. And, I read it, and that was really fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, no, so was your piece. Like, and we kind of talked about, like, your piece was great too. So
yeah,
I think we both kind of arrived at the same conclusion. Probably actually both from similar avenues, but in terms of the articles we put out, they're a little bit different. This offense does not work without Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. And, like, if they were confident that Baker Mayfield was the guy, they would not have given Nick Chubb this contract.
I agree. I think that's really the next step to that eventual conversation they need to have, and this is something that me and you have actually talked about previously, and that is if they're confident in Baker Mayfield's the guy, they're not going to worry about paying a running back no matter how good they are, because they know that the quarterback Baker would be able to be, I've used this phrase over and over again, be what drives the offense. Well, what we know is that Nick Chubb drives the offense. Right. It's not Baker.
Right. And, like, I think this is where the kind of, like, just the general analytics movement does have a point, right? Which is that, yes, on average, if you have a good quarterback and a good running back, you're going to want to prioritize throwing the ball as much as possible, no matter how good the running back is. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that, though, especially in this type of system, which is heavy play action, heavy kind of outside zone counter stuff, if you don't have a good quarterback, I don't know that you want to make that investment as much in the passing game. Like, I mean, you and I have talked about this. I think this is why the receivers are going to be the group that loses some value next summer. Mm-hmm. Like, I think at least one of Odell and Jarvis are probably gone. I would be shocked I may be shocked if Higgins is on the roster this year, let alone next year. Mm-hmm. Like, I think they're going to cut some guys. So, unless Baker really can kind of show us this year that he's the guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but they don't know that yet, neither do we.
Yeah, and what I think it comes down to, and we've said it before, is can he show us that he's the reason these plays are happening in the passing game, and not the play is the reason that he is successful.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I got on a big kind of film thing. It wasn't COVID. I was sick with something this weekend. So I was just kind of like in my bed watching different like YouTube breakdowns of tape. And like, what's clear to me is I don't think we've talked enough about how great Stefanski is. It's scheming an offense so Baker knows his reads before the snap. Like, there's a formula that Baker has to know for every snap, but he doesn't actually need to make many reads during the snap. And that's great scheming by Stefanski. Mm-hmm. But right now, the problem with the offense, and you and I have talked about this, is Stefanski has to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Because if Stefanski's not perfect against a team like the Chiefs, Baker's not going to be good enough to overcome that.
Yeah. You're right. You're 100% right with that, because it's limitation by the quarterback. Not that Baker is inherently bad, but he's not going to be someone that you have wiggle room with. Your margin for error is very small, right. And I don't think
right.
that
and that's why they re-signed Nick Chubb.
You're right. That's why they re-signed Nick Chubb. That's why they're paying this wide receiver group and continue to pay this wide receiver group as much money as they do. That's why they went out and signed Austin Hooper to the massive deal that he was. Yeah, Stefanski likes tight ends, but let's be real. They need to make sure the best skill positions are around the quarterback so that the quarterback can be, I'm not going to say carried, but so the quarterback can be elevated by the position players, not the other way around.
Right. I mean, like, this is the thing for me. Nick Chubb is the guy. Like, Stefanski doesn't need to call a perfect game in the run game. Nick Chubb, and even honestly to a certain extent Kareem Hunt, can make up if the play call isn't perfect, right? If the blocking isn't perfect, they're that good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why they re-signed him. I think Nick Chubb makes Kevin Stefanski's life a whole lot easier. But, and this isn't to say Baker's bad. I legitimately think Baker's a good quarterback. Like, he is far and away the best quarterback for the new Browns. With that said, and we've talked about this, he is so inconsistent that it's just, in for weird, like, if you watch, like, some of these kind of, like, videos and breakdowns, like, he's doing something right on one play, and then a game later on the exact same play making a mistake and vice versa. So, like, on the good end, you have, like, that week 6 game against the Steelers. He doesn't read the rover safety and throws I think it was a pick 6, but if not, a bad interception to Minka Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the next 2 games, he's adjusted, right? And so in the week 17 and the playoff game, he adjusted, and that's like the good side of it, right? Like, he figured that out. But there's also stuff in the latter 2 Steelers games that he doesn't do well, right? So the Steelers were able to get him on kind of the sides of the field, right, on the boundaries.
Yeah.
In the last 2 games, they were able to trick him and make him throw bad passes, and that's what's so confusing to me, and that's why you have to re-sign Nick Chubb. I think for this type of offense, Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry are so far and away better than any other running back or any other. Let me rephrase: any other rusher. They are so better, much better for this type of offense, and this offense needs that.
I'm glad you used that very specific clarifying word, because it is important in this particular context. Because Henry and Chubb are such gifted rushers, they're so much better at running the football than anyone else. But there are running backs or people who play the position that do have other skill sets that are far better at those skills than Chubb and Henry are.
Right, and like, I think a guy like McCaffrey or Kamara, like, though, it's a different position. I don't care what anybody says. It's a different position.
The responsibilities are entirely different.
Yeah, I mean, those 4 guys, like Chubb and Henry as rushers, Kamara and McCaffrey is kind of catcher, more pass-oriented running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Though they are better than anybody else by, I think, actually fairly substantial margins. Like, you have guys like Dalvin Cook who can kind of do a little bit of everything, but they're not at that level. But for this type of offense, I think a Chubb or a Henry is more valuable, because they have to. Not only is that run game just crucial for everything they do in the pass game, but they're playing without perfect quarterbacks also.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how similar the teams are built from that perspective when you look at it, because Tannehill and Baker are not all that dissimilar from each other, and then they have really great running backs in Chubb and Henry.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me it's kind of it's easy to say, oh well, the Titans haven't won anything, but like, if you actually look at the past 2 years, they've gotten close. Like, I think in terms of building a team and offense around a quarterback like a Tannehill or a Baker, the Titans have done about as perfect of a job as any other team has done around that. Like, they've done better than the Vikings have on offense. Vikings have no offensive line. They haven't done an offensive line in 3 years, and people wonder why Kirk Cousins is so inconsistent under pressure. Well, like, if you put an offensive line around him, that wouldn't be the case. And like, the Titans and Browns both have done that.
Mm-hmm. They have, and it really makes a world of difference for a quarterback in that specific group or tier. But let's get into the actual contract now for Chubb. It's a 3-year deal, $36 million, $20 million guaranteed, and I was ecstatic when I saw these numbers. First of all, I'm happy for Nick Chubb. He got life-changing money. He doesn't have to worry about anything post-football as long as he does things correctly financially. But from a team perspective, it doesn't bury them. They're able to work around it. They're able to get out of it if necessary, and it doesn't keep them locked in long-term, which is what I wanted if they were actually going to extend Chubb. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You and I were laughing about this, and I think we both, like, the second the contract was announced, popped beers But like we were
Yeah.
laughing about this because like there were three trends on Twitter at the time.
Hmm.
One was where we were, which is like heck yeah, just heck yeah, period, done.
Yeah.
Then there was the Nick Chubb took a really bad contract, and I don't. What people need to realize is by it only being a 3-year extension, he can get another contract in his prime, and he's
Hmm.
way short of the 1,500 carry mark where most running backs tend to start declining.
Hmm.
He will probably be short of that mark by the time he can get a new deal. So for him, it lets him get paid a second time. B, he's making $11 million more this year than he was last year, and C, he also has a history of injuries. Like, if you're Nick Chubb, this gives you security. If Nick Chubb got hurt this year or next year when he was on the franchise tag or the year after that when he was on the franchise tag, he's not getting this type of contract.
Yeah.
So for him, I think this makes a lot of sense.
So I just did some quick math. Let's say he averaged the same amount of carries per game over the next 3 seasons. Oh, it should be 4 seasons. My bad. Over the next 4 seasons. And that means he doesn't miss a game. The offense doesn't change a whole bunch, and Nick Chubb is still Nick Chubb and reliable. That'd be 1,000 more carries over the next 4 years, which would put him at about 1680, 1684.
Which is still pretty, like, I think that's still like the kind of safe. He may be declining a little bit,
but
it's probably still good enough to get another contract.
And the overall wear and tear on him is not as extreme compared to other guys his age currently. Right. And you also have to add in the factor of the offense is going to change a little bit. We might see a little bit more Kareem Hunt involvement. We might see whoever his replacement is, if they replace him at some point, involved as well. He could have some injury and he misses some time. Not like hopefully nothing substantial. Maybe like hurts his arm or something. You know what I mean? So right. There's potential for carries to be taken off. So I'm not necessarily all that worried from the Browns' perspective.
Nor like from his perspective, right? Like if you're Nick Chubb, like you're thinking, listen, maybe I won't, maybe I'll start declining, and if I do, this is a good contract. But if not, I can probably get the exact same contract, at least money wise, in 4 more years.
Yeah, some team will be stupid to pay a running back close to 30, even though it would be Nick Chubb and he's still good. But paying running backs at or above 30 is usually a very bad endeavor. So I could see some team throwing some large contract at him regardless, and then we always usually see how that goes. I mean, we all remember some great running backs ending their careers in strange uniforms. Edgerrin James in Arizona, Emmitt Smith in Arizona.
Yeah, he'll sign with the Cardinals. That's where it happens. That's where those run. And like, listen, I think probably in 3 or 4 years time, like he'll be 28, 29. Maybe he won't, right? Maybe he doesn't get that contract. But do I think if he puts on a good season before the year before that contract's up, would some team give him a 2-3 year deal where he's getting paid another $12 million a year? Yeah, I do. I think that's plausible. And maybe not, but like that's the idea behind this contract, right? If not, he's still okay. And if so, he just gets paid again.
Yeah.
Like it was a smart contract from his perspective. From the Browns' perspective, it's great too because really they're not locked in, right? After the first 2 years of this contract, they can cut him with very little cost. I don't think they will, but they could. They are not. They've also given themselves wiggle room, I think, surrounding the quarterback position, right? So I don't. I think Baker will be the Browns quarterback for the next 5 years. Honestly, probably, no matter whatever issues I have with that, I think that's probably the world we're in. But it's not impossible that he doesn't, right? So, for example, if next year Aaron Rodgers says he demands a trade, and let's say the Browns make it to either the Super Bowl and lose or the AFC Championship game and lose, I don't think it's implausible the Browns say, and that all like Baker has a good year, not a great year. I don't think it's implausible that the Browns make that type of trade. And having Chubb on this type of contract gives you the opportunity that if you do that type of kind of very short-term trade, you can A, win the Super Bowl, and then B, draft another quarterback while still having Chubb. Or you just keep Baker, and then you need Chubb anyways for this offense.
Yeah.
It's a great deal.
It really is. And what it does, another bonus from the Browns' perspective, this also is a bonus for Nick Chubb as well, is they don't have to play what seemed like it could have been the inevitable franchise tag game, which very rarely works out well for either side when it comes to running backs. We've seen it pretty much have a negative result just about every time. One of the more famous examples being Le'Veon Bell sitting out, then signing for less with the Jets, and then his career is basically over now.
Yeah, no, the franchise tag was the world both parties wanted to avoid. I am not confident that if Chubb did not get re-signed, they would have franchise tagged him next year. I think they may have let him walk. And I think they probably explained that to him, right? That, listen, neither of us want to be in this world. You definitely don't, because it never ends well for running backs. And we don't, because we don't want to pay you that much on one-year deals. And so I think it worked out. Listen, it's great for both parties. I think, here's the other thing. Like, I firmly believe, based on research I did this weekend and I've done kind of throughout the year, Nick Chubb is a very analytically valuable running back to the Browns being able to win games. Even if you disagree with that, and let's say you're like, listen, the numbers say no matter, and this is wrong, but let's say you insist on this, that numbers suggest running backs don't matter. Here's the other thing I'll point out, and like, this may be silly because I know sports is about winning. I think most people just like watching running backs play. Like, there's something to that, right? Like, even if it's not all that valuable, like, sports are about enjoyment. And like, at some point, I wish we could just like take a step back and enjoy the game. I enjoy watching Nick Chubb run.
Same. He's really good. He's extremely talented. He's, like I said, one of, if not the best runner in football. And I'm glad you brought up the running backs don't matter, because that's such a I want to be the smartest person in the room statement. That's what that is. Okay. And pretty much anyone who says that and puts that out there is not the smartest person in the room statement. They're just echoing something that they heard someone on TV or a podcast or read said. Okay. So it wasn't their own original statement. Okay. First of all. Second of all, if you want to make that statement actually true, you just got to tweak it a little bit. Average running backs don't matter. Good running backs do matter. Nick Chubb's a good running back.
I mean, you could say most running backs don't matter.
Or, most running backs don't matter too.
I'm very comfortable making that statement, that most running backs don't matter. Nick Chubb matters.
Yeah, you're right. At the end of the day...
I mean, like, do I think, like, Devin Singletary is, like, this... Or, that's the Bills running back, right? Devin Singletary? Yeah. Do I think he matters? No, I think he's probably very replaceable, even though he's a good running back. Same with, like, Chris Carson in Seattle, right? Like, he's a good running back. He's replaceable. Like, I don't think, like, he's that substantially better than whatever you're going to find is a free agent. Nick Chubb matters. We know, because Kareem Hunt, also probably a top 10 running back in the NFL. The offense looked like crud when Hunt was the number one running back.
Yeah, there's a very, very noticeable drop-off when Kareem Hunt is in the game versus Nick Chubb. When they're trying to run plays designed for Nick Chubb with Kareem Hunt. It just doesn't work. Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think the running backs don't matter statement is... And like, it's funny, even a lot of the analytics people will tell you, because I've seen it on Twitter, like, the statement actually ended up being a little regrettable because it disguised the main point they were trying to make, which is that most running backs are replaceable, and generally speaking, if you have a good quarterback and a good running back, you're going to want to prioritize the quarterback. That was the initial statement, and then it got bastardized.
Oh, yeah, because it got bastardized because passing's more sexy than running.
Well, and it's also dumb. Like, I get the background of the phrase. It's like, if you make the phrase running backs don't matter, you got to understand, like, that's going to get bastardized.
Yeah.
It's a really dumb sentence.
It's going to get hijacked by people that have no business trying to preach sports to people.
Right.
Because that's normally what it is.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
So is there anything else you would like to say about Nick Chubb before we move on to our next topic?
Really, like, the only thing, like, I really encourage you guys to read the articles we wrote our listeners, to read the articles we wrote over the weekend.
Yeah.
I think both of us kind of really tried to address like the value in the sign. And I think in both articles we also like said like, listen, there are reasons why you may not be thrilled with this signing, and then we both said, but like these are the reasons that's wrong.
Yeah.
So I think people should really kind of give our pieces a read, because I think they both were pretty good and real. I mean, I really enjoyed yours. Interesting, good reads.
Yeah, I mean, we go from different angles to tackle the same subject and come to ultimately the same conclusion. So,
yep, exactly.
Depending on what style you prefer, I still recommend you read both of them. But if you want some very in-depth data and want to be like, why does this make so much sense numbers-wise, Jordan, your article is fantastic for that. If you just want just kind of like a nice little casual read and just be like, okay, tell me why this makes sense, that's what I got you.
Yeah, and to be clear to the listeners, James is a much better writer than I am. Like substantially much easier read. So, yes, 100%.
Thanks for that. Thank you very much. You also are a talented writer, my friend. But let's go on to our next subject, because it's actually going to lead to a new segment we're doing. But first, the subject is there's a viral video of Jadeveon Clowney doing some strange drill, but then just tripping over himself at the end. What the hell was that?
I don't know what the drill is. It seems like a poorly. I mean, I know that I've seen the drill before. I think the way it was like set up was very poorly designed. What was funny to me, like Clowney's like knocking over these poles, and like he looks fine. He looks like you would expect a starting defensive lineman in the NFL to look. And then he falls, and people are like, "Oh man, this clip is amazing." I'm thinking like, first off, I think you guys are missing the him falling part of the end. That not that amazing. But second, like, who cares? It was hilarious, though.
Like you said, the general consensus I saw from people who either are or were in the NFL have said this drill was set up incorrectly. But it was just kind of funny just to see him. It looks like he's cruising, then falls right on his face. I'm just like, this was just like too perfect. Yeah. And one of my favorites, Mike Lombardi, tweeted out and said, "Thanks to all who sent this," because he knows if anyone listens to his podcast, the GM Shuffle, or listen to him talk about Jadeveon Clowney, he's not necessarily the biggest fan of him. So as soon as the moment the internet could take to tag him in it and send it to him, they ran with it, and he's just like, "Yep, I totally get this."
Well, and to be fair to the clip, like, I think it shows, like, the issue you and I have had with Clowney the whole time. It's not that we think, like, Clowney is bad. It's that, like, what he does so well is throw, like, all of his effort in that initial burst.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's exactly what happens.
Right. Like, he's incredible. And then by the end of the play, he's exhausted.
Yeah.
And, like, it's like, seriously, like, if you want to watch, like, a guy kick ass at snap, like, there's not a guy better in the NFL than Clowney. Mm-hmm. The problem is, like, he gets exhausted from doing that.
Yeah, like...
And then he falls.
Yeah, he made those first two pylons his bitch, then the third one tripped him up.
Right, exactly. Which is what happens. Like, that's his entire NFL career. That is the definition of his NFL career.
That seems just about right, but... we were talking about this clip last night over Twitter, me and you were, and I came up with some phrasing that you fell in absolute love with. Would you like to share it, or do you want me to introduce the phrasing?
No, it's your baby. You got to share it.
Okay, so we're talking about Clowney, we're talking about who he is. We brought up former Brown Olivier Vernon. You said... Before I said the phrase, you said Clowney is just a guy. I said, you know what? There are guys and there are dudes. Clowney is a guy. Vernon was a dude. So,
yep.
Based off of that, let's start with this new segment, guys or dudes. Let's look at the Browns' defensive line That's the first position group we're going to start with. Who's a guy and who's a dude? We've pretty much already established that Jadeveon Clowney's just a guy, but the obvious dude of the group's Myles Garrett, right? He's a dude.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Myles, well...
He's a dude.
I think he's a dude.
He's a dude.
I think he's a dude. I think he's a dude. We'll see this year, but I am cautiously optimistic that he is a dude.
Yeah.
Based on like what I saw from camp today, where he just like destroyed play action bootlegs, I think he's a dude. I'm less worried about him than I was. So given like my 2 training camp video watches, which I know means I know everything about the team, but
yes,
but that in all seriousness, that did give me some confidence. So he's a dude. I think he's probably like in terms of the starters, the only guy we could actually classify as like this guy's a dude. Like he is like one of the best in his role, his position.
Now, is there another guy in the group who we want to give the dude designation to?
I mean, like, maybe when we start getting the backups, like, I think there's actually some, like, pretty talented backups on the defensive line. But they're backups, right? They're dudes for being a backup.
Okay, so let's tweak it for the backup guy. So, as a backup, who's a dude and who's just a guy? Because I have one who's probably going to be a backup, who I have pretty much identified as a dude. And that's...
All right, you go first. Go with it.
The one I've identified as a dude who is in a backup role would be, or, projected backup role, Malik Jackson. He's a dude in the backup role.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know people think he may start at defensive tackle. I don't know how you can start him in Billings, so I think he probably is kind of that rotational piece. He's a dude. That dude plays it, and he plays it. He can do the 5 tech. He can do a little bit of the 3 tech. Like, he's a dude. Versatile. He's good. Do I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler or even like a consistent starter? No. But he's a dude. He's going to play a lot of snaps.
Yeah. I mean, even if he's technically the starter, I still think snap count-wise, he's probably going to play towards that backup amount of snap count, honestly.
Exactly.
So even if he's listed as the starter, I think he's going to get backup snap counts, honestly.
I agree.
Now,
I agree. And I don't think he's going to be playing at one position either, which I think is like the other thing, right? Like, no matter what people say, Jadeveon Clowney's playing most of his snaps at that right defensive end position.
Oh, you mean they're not kicking him into defensive tackle? Oh, that's
Correct.
what Twitter told me.
Yeah. I mean, do I think like there will be times where he plays defensive tackle, like an obvious pass rush snaps? Yeah, but there's so few obvious pass rush like snaps where it obviously benefits the Browns to rush the passer. Like you can maybe 1 to 2 a game. Otherwise, yeah, Clowney's the right defensive end. Garrett's the left defensive end. And here's the other thing about Clowney. This is the other thing that I think makes him a guy. Vernon could play both defensive end positions very, very well. Like, they would very frequently last year just flip their positions based on matchups. Clowney has shown, like, historically, he's not a great left defensive end. He's not great at going after the quarterback's blind side because of the same problem he's had his entire career, which is, like, he throws everything he can at the start of a play, which means by, like, the time he reaches the quarterback, he's tired. Which is the other reason why I think he's a guy. But anyways, like Billings, what do you think about Billings? Starting defensive tackle.
This is a tough one. We haven't seen him play in a year.
Yeah. We know he's there's no other way to say this, but like he's fat as fuck. So there's that.
I'm gonna throw him into the guy category. I think he's just a guy.
Yeah, I think he's just a guy too. I think he's a guy. I think he's a placeholder for a year. I think if you're the Browns, I think what you're hoping are 2 guys that I think are guys right now, but you're hoping Jordan Elliott or Tommy Togiai become a dude.
I think Togiai could become one, but we got to see him play in the NFL first.
Right. Exactly. I agree with that. I am very high on Togiai. I actually think Elliott, like in terms of your rotational defensive lineman, I think he could become a dude. I think like if you're the Browns, you want Malik Jackson to take Jordan Elliott under his wing. Because to me, like that's the projection you have for Elliott. Like the high end for Elliott is like this rotational defensive lineman that can play in a variety of spots across the defensive line, not necessarily somebody you want as your starter.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Absolutely.
Tack McKinley. Tack McKinley. Hit me.
Oh man, this guy's a dude. No, he's a guy. He's a guy. He's a guy. He's a guy. Okay. That's where I'm at with Zach McKinley.
Just honest question, like because third string defensive lineman, I think Porter Gustin's a dude. Like, I, point being,
I'm
I
with
don't
you.
know that. Like,
He's a sneaky dude.
does Tack McKinley make the roster over Porter Gustin? Honestly,
I think he makes the roster, but I don't think he makes it over Porter Gustin. I think he makes it over some of these other guys. So maybe like a Malik McDowell or a Joe Jackson, Cameron Malvo, guys like that. But I don't think he makes it over specifically Porter Gustin.
I mean, I think Porter Gustin for like what he is, right, which is a backup defensive end, is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can play both sides. He's not a terrible pass rusher. He's not. I mean, he's not good, but like for a backup,
If he
I think
needs
it's exactly what you want.
if you need someone to execute the play while the starter's not in, Porter Gustin's pretty damn good at doing that. I don't
Yeah,
remember seeing him make a whole bunch of like critical mistakes that we've seen with other backup defensive ends that have graced First Energy Field, First Energy Stadium's field. But Porter Gustin has been pretty consistent in that backup role, and he's not someone that's just gonna like completely misread a play or do something that's going to cost you the game, really.
Right. I agree with that. I think that it's funny in a lot of ways. I am more hopeful for some of these backups to become dudes than I am for the starters. Like Miles Garrett's a dude, and I think the rest of that, like, and again, maybe if you consider Malik Jackson like a starter, whatever, like,
Yeah.
so you have two dudes, two guys, but like, I don't have much hope for the two guys. But when
Yeah.
you get to the backups, like Elliott, Togi, and Gustin,
Mhm.
I don't think. Oh, well, I think Gustin actually for a backup is a dude right now, but like those three, I actually think have untapped potential that I'm
Mhm.
excited for. I don't feel that way about a lot of the starters. Like I cannot imagine Andrew Billings is going to come back after not playing for a year and all of a sudden be just a stud starter.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either. Tack McKinley, whatever he does, bonus. But quick side note: the Ravens signing Justin Houston this past weekend makes me hate the Tack McKinley signing much more because they paid him less. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he has definitely declined over the past few years, but like he's still a really good player.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think like for the Ravens he's going to be playing every snap? Absolutely not. Honestly, he's probably a rotational defensive lineman for
Mm-hmm.
them. But like that's what Tack McKinley is for us.
Yeah, I would rather have Justin Houston as a rotational defensive lineman than Tack McKinley.
10 times out of 10.
Yeah,
10 times out of 10.
because
I just
even in the later stages of his career, guess what? Justin Houston, he's a dude.
yeah. Well, it's like Malik Jackson, right?
Mhm.
Like, are they guys I want starting and like playing 70 to 75% of snaps? No. But like, are they guys that I would be very comfortable with taking 50 to 60% of snaps? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Is
That's
there?
my view on it. Like,
Yeah.
I just
You're right. Now, there's a couple guys on this list still. I don't think Damian Square makes the roster. Marvin Wilson, I think, is going to be a practice squad guy. But I think
he's one of those. I think Marvin Wilson's one of those guys that like more than likely is a practice squad guy. But like we talked about it after we signed him as an undrafted free agent. He is talented as all hell.
Mm-hmm.
Like that dude can play. And so like he's one of those guys where I'm like, this guy may end up being a dude like this season, and nobody sees it coming.
Yeah. Here's my projection for Marvin Wilson. He starts off on the practice squad. There's an injury to one of the defensive tackles. They bring him up. The dude starts playing, and the guy who got hurt doesn't get his job back. He gets Wally pipped.
Yeah, I would. That wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Or that the guy that's hurt gets the spot back, but his replacement doesn't, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm Jordan Elliott, that's a situation that like if Billings gets hurt, I think Elliott is probably who you play in that left defensive tackle spot.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, maybe you do Togia. I don't know, but if I mean in that world where Marvin Wilson takes those kind of rotational snaps and he looks really good, I don't know for a fact that like the Elliott or the Togiai or whoever it is end up getting that rotational spot back. Wilson would have been a first or second round pick if it weren't for kind of character issues in college.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple.
Yeah. So I definitely think he could be has let's call it dude potential. How's that sound? Dude potential?
Yeah. I think we have a lot of these guys that have dude potential, but that are still currently guys.
Yeah, they just need to prove it a little bit. So I think, Togiai, I mean, they're both, two of the guys are rookies. So, Togiai, Wilson, dude potential, Porter Gustin, rotational dude. But a lot of guys on this. So Elliott, Billings, Clowney, Tech McKinley.
I mean, the defensive line is the biggest question mark in this whole team. Like, it's just the reality. It's the biggest question mark on this whole team. Because the depth is, I mean, in reality, we don't know who Togiai and Wilson are. We really still don't know who Jordan Elliott is. We know who Tech McKinley is. Meh. We know who Porter Gustin is. Again, like Sal, but he's meh. I personally don't think Jadeveon Clowney is, like, great. I am less confident than a lot of people on his ability to perform. I think there will be a noticeable drop-off from having Olivier Vernon. I'm confident in Malik Jackson for what he is, and I'm not confident in Andrew Billings. Like, there's a lot of question marks there.
There are, and I think in time, I think past this season, over the next off season, through the draft, through free agency, the next position group they specifically target to make substantial upgrades in is the defensive line, because they haven't really made any long-term commitments there outside of a couple draft picks, where they've made long-term commitments just about everywhere else.
Curtis Weaver? About Curtis Weaver, speaking of like guys that have potential at some point and then I've never seen play.
I have not heard anything.
I mean, I feel like he's another cut. Like, that's the problem I have with this line. Like, I remember when they signed Curtis Weaver, he was undrafted free agent, and everybody was like, oh man, like, this guy's special.
And it's like, is he?
Probably not. Probably not. Like, that's the problem with getting guys like this. Like, you just, they, like, even a Marvin Wilson, who you and I are really high on, I mean, he may be nothing.
Yeah, that's very true. He can be nothing.
Square. Yeah. Damian Square is like another guy that everybody was really high on when he was a rookie. I remember this. And then he's had like a weird past few seasons. And now the Browns picked him up. Like, maybe he is actually something. But like, I'm not sure. Like, that's my I mean, he's been in the league for a lot of years and has really not played a lot of games. So I know he's like a 32-year-old vet, but I don't know. I'm not super confident in his ability to be anything more than a preseason cut.
I'd say the way I looked at him was just a training camp body. That's the way I looked at the signing to begin with, is Damian Square training camp body. But when it's all said and done, I'm pretty sure it's all just going to be
a lot of guys.
He's
Malik McDowell, somebody that may make the roster.
He might. I'm not positive. He could be one of those back end of the roster type dudes, but
this line is shaky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if God forbid Myles Garrett gets hurt, that's all I'm going to say. Because if he gets hurt, and this is going to be the Joe Woods problem, right? Last year, Joe Woods had a good defensive line. That was a good defensive line last year. He was able to generate pressure with the 4-man rush. I am less confident in their ability to do that this year. And so then the question's got to be, okay, well, if you can't generate pressure, how are you going to make the quarterback's life a living hell? I mean, I think Taki's going to play a lot of snaps just because of his ability to generate pressure. Honestly, same with Jacob Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're linebackers, but they're at least they can create pressure. Because this defensive line, but then you play them to create pressure. That's one less person you have out in coverage. So I am Woods that's going to be a problem for Woods.
It is. It's really going to be something to monitor and watch how everything develops, progresses, or regresses over the season. You know, it could really go in either direction depending on how everything really works out, honestly.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree.
Any last thoughts here about the Browns before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I think like it's funny. We really talked about two positions today. One where I think running back, I think the Browns have the best running back room in the NFL, and I'm not sure it's particularly close. And then defensive line, you have Myles Garrett, so that's a plus. But in terms of playoff teams, like teams that I think have playoff potential, I think the Browns have one of the worst defensive lines. So we kind of hit both today.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting interesting dynamic between those two position groups.
Yeah,
with how the Browns are set up.
Yeah. I'm just ready for the season to get. I saw some tweet today that 11 days until the Premier League starts, and then like 30 until the NFL season, something like that, or like 32, something. I don't know. I'm really excited. The next month is going to be just a blast.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, especially in the wake of the Cleveland baseball team just kind of falling apart. It would give me something to get excited for and pay attention to on a more regular basis.
If I told you 5 years ago the most exciting team in Cleveland would be the Browns, what would you have said? Like the Cavs just win the title. I say 5 years, Browns are going to be the best team in Cleveland. What would you have said?
I would call you a liar. I would ask,
right.
Did one of the teams move?
Right.
I would ask what happened to LeBron.
Yeah.
And I would just be completely confused.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it's exciting. I think as much as I love the Cavs, and I don't follow the Indians much, except I'm a total fair weather Indians fan, but like the fans that go to games for the Indians love the Indians or the Guardians now.
Yeah.
Love them. I think as much as Cleveland loves both of those teams, if you could poll every single person living in Cleveland and you give them the option of they don't care, what team would people most want to win the title? I think it's the Browns by significant margins. So
yeah, it is.
I'm pretty excited about it. I think Cleveland's pretty excited about it, and I just hope that we've seen it so many times where you have a year with expectations, then the team does bad. But I really hope this year, like, it's just a continuation of last.
Yeah, I really hope so too, and I think they're really in a good spot for moving forward. But that's going to do it for this episode here, and as always, you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, SoundCloud, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. This is Believeland.com has it, as well as RealBrownsFans.com, and I want to say thank you for listening and spending a little under an hour listening to us talk about the Browns, guys and dudes, and a little miscellaneous Cleveland sports at the end.